All right, I guess it can be just like super organic kind of thing, you know. I wanted to do this because
Hmm.
I mean, I think the main thing that started was I think your Snapchat stories. I usually don't look at people's stories, but like I just scroll through it. But I think one day or two, like you were the only one that was on my the friends, and I just looked at it, and I looked at like five a.m. the Hustle podcast, and I started like hearing it. And it's very inspiring. I mean, what you're doing it's amazing. Whereas from being like especially knowing you from tennis, it's I guess it was one of the finding like new friends like from different schools and playing against each other, playing in the group lessons and all that. That was kind of fun. But like transforming yourself, like don't take me wrong, but you were not the one. Like you're not the most talented. You were not the most talented in terms of like tennis. Don't take me wrong, but you're the like from what I've seen you're probably like the hardest worker out there. Trying to get to the next level or anything you do. And yes, I just wanted to do this. I mean, thanks. First of all, thanks for that. I mean, my first question was like, what was your main goal in creating that podcast, and what were you trying to do? What was going on in your head when you started doing that?
Yeah, so it's really funny. It actually started off for very selfish reasons
Mhm.
because I was always the most curious individual and the most interested in other people in general.
Mhm.
And a lot of times I would literally DM random people that like I was interested in, asking them questions or trying to figure out like what they did to start their business. And it started like very organically, is that I wanted to figure out why these people were successful. And then I realized like, hey, there's all these podcasts out there. Like if you know who Gary Vee is, like he always preaches
Yeah.
like just go out and do, don't like always talk about it, be about it. And so I
Yeah.
had the idea April of 2019, so a year and a half ago about,
Mhm.
and basically I was like, oh, I'm going to do this podcast where I'm going to interview, it was mainly entrepreneurs about why they're successful, to figure out like how I can do it in my own life and how other people can apply those principles to their lives as well.
A few sentences, few phrases, but I think it was great. I mean, who were you kind of like your like when you realize like you have to do this, like your like kind of role models, I would say.
Well, I listened to initial role, and his was more like he just gave advice, and his advice would always like don't wait to do something, and he was always like just make as much content as you possibly can and document the process of learning things rather than the final product, because people want to see the process and a journey. And I was like, well, I'm not an expert on anything by any means, but I can show my own development and the development of others through a podcast. And so he was the first person that got me thinking about it. But I'd say the other person that really inspired me was a guy named Nee Sobo. He has a podcast called the Sports Motivation Podcast, and he doesn't do many interviews, but he was the first one where I was like, this guy is using a podcast for exactly what I want to do. He basically teaches athletes and entrepreneurs just like high performance skills, processes, how to dominate competition, all that different stuff. And I was so intrigued and I listened to his content so much. I was like, how can I do this in a way to where I know I don't have the credibility to teach others yet, but how can I use someone else's credibility to do the same? And so he was an inspiration. And then there's a guy named Casey Adams. I think he's 19 or 20 now, and he basically started a company. He's known for like network at a very young age, and I was basically thinking in my head, if he can do it, and if he can have a podcast that's wildly successful and interview Gary V, Grant Cardone, Jesse is. That was the initial process and almost the validation that age is not a deterrent and that you shouldn't use age as an excuse. And so that was really what pushed me were those three people.
I mean, that's great. I mean, it's great that I mean you were working towards something. I don't know what you're working towards. I mean, if you want to share it, it's fine. If you want, if you're into like entrepreneurship or, I remember you saying you wanted to be a tennis player one time, and I mean, goals change. Goals do change sometimes, and yeah, I mean, at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, I guess like people define success like differently. For instance, some people, I mean, we can for some it might be, you know, accumulation, or like increasing free time, or like having like really good options, like what they want to do in life, or maybe like create a social impact throughout the world that can help so many people. Uh, when did you like, what was your way to consider yourself like a success, and like what do you dream of, kind of, basically? And if it's too personal, it's totally fine.
No, I got you. So the first thing I'll kind of reference is Matthew McConaughey, and he always says, "My goal is to, or my hero is myself 10 years down the road," but you're never going to catch that because you're always in the present day. And so I don't think that success is really a destination. It's a journey. It sounds very like ethereal and very kind of out there. But I'd say success in some regard is hopefully going to be financial success, because financial success and wealth is freedom, and the ultimate goal in my life and what many other people's lives are is happiness. And obviously money doesn't inherently make you happy forever, but it can give you the freedom to do things that will make you happy and give you more opportunities, and like relieve some amount of stress. And I think it's a way to keep score. My uncle always told me that he's very successful, but it's a way for him to see how he's doing in a game of life. So I think that my inherent goal, my kind of overarching thing, is that I want to help as many people as possible realize their potential and realize that their goals can actually become a reality if they put in the work. Because I think a lot of people do this profession or be successful, this is what's going to pay the most. But in reality, in 2020, 2021 coming up, you can make money online by doing silly things. Like if you really love the Smurfs and you like love that with a passion, and you make a blog about it, and you sell little trinkets and all that stuff, you can probably make $100,000 a year if you do it the right way. But if you do a job that you hate and you're getting paid $200,000, I can bet you that if you're doing something you love, which is say Smurfs or whatever, you're probably going to be more happy doing that, getting paid less for it than getting paid more for something that you hate doing. So I think it's a double-edged sword. Like whether you want to equate money to happiness, or if you want to work less for happiness and have the freedom of working for yourself. And that's where I always want to be an entrepreneur, because I thought I want the freedom of choosing what my day looks like, and to not have someone in the corporate world tell me what to do. And obviously I'm open to working for someone. I'm not going to say I'll never work for someone for the rest of my life. But I think that I value control and freedom in my own creativity and decisions, because this is kind of going back a ways. But when I was a freshman, I thought I was going to be a teacher. That's what I thought I was going to be, because my whole family's teachers. But what I realized is that I have a passion for teaching others, number one, because I think that's, in my opinion, I didn't think that was allow me to express my own expertise that I wanted to learn. And so I want to be able to teach something that I learned for my entire life, which is hopefully like how to build habits, how to build processes, entrepreneurship, all this different stuff that I have a passion for, rather than a curriculum that's given to me.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that sounds like I mean, although it sounds like, you know, a huge plan, you're gonna go through like a lot of worst times. Not mean I'm not wishing you that, but like of course everyone goes through it. I mean, your reason is like not purely selfish, instead of like purely selfless, I would say, you know, like you pretty much like want to understand how successful people do it, so that like you can derive from their experiences, and people can derive, you know, create their own path of their success. And
Yeah,
I mean,
and what's funny is that when like bad things happen, and obviously we know bad things are going to happen, and someone I interviewed said it perfectly, and this is kind of what I live by. And he said, "Why would you like not wish bad things to happen in your life? Because they're going to happen no matter what." He said, "This is how you need to look at them. Every time something bad happens in your life, if you have a journal, whatever, you're going to write it down, right? And that's just another chapter to the story of your life." And if you had a story where you're like, "Oh, I reached every successful thing that I wanted along the way, there were no bumps in the road. It was as easy as it could be. All I did was work hard and I was given everything." That would not be a fun story to read. You want to read, "I lost all my money after this mistake that happened, and then I came back and made it all back." Like that's the type of story that will sell books in the future. But I think that's at least a good way to look at it, because if you thought everything was going to go well in your life, you're probably not going to be successful, because every time you get knocked down, you're going to be, "Woe is me. Like I'm the victim." but you have to realize that like life happens for you and everything can be taken as a learning experience. And it's just a lot of people just view their perspectives on things like that are incorrect.
I mean, I mean, that's great. With the way that you said that, like, if our life is a book, like an autobiography, uh, of course, you want to have, kind of like bumps and, like a plot twists, I would say, in your story, and that would make it sound fun for whoever is reading it, and maybe, another thing that makes me, kind of, you know, to be in the present, I guess, to accept whatever it is. Like, I think David Goggins, I think one of the, I'm pretty sure you know who he is. He said, like, you have to accept that you're shit, like, at something. It doesn't matter, like, not in a negative manner, but you just have to accept the matter, because when you're losing, or like, especially like when it comes to tennis matches or like anything, pretty much, if you fail an exam, uh, your ego comes in and starts hurting you a lot, and we have to take that out, and we have to accept that, like, you're like you're shit, and you have to do, you have to accept it. That allows you to kind of, like, self-analyze more and go in depth. I think you have a similar, story to that.
Yeah. Yeah. When I've seen the most growth in myself when I didn't think I was all that, when I had something to prove, when people, because a lot of times when if you do something out of the ordinary for like, say, an 18-year-old like myself, people are like, oh, like you have a podcast, you're so cool. Like this is incredible. But in reality, I have to keep myself and say like, there's a 19, 18, 19-year-old out there making millions of dollars. And that's where I want to be in the standard. And that people may think what you're doing is like crazy awesome. But if you let that penetrate your head, you're going to be complacent. Or every time you don't do something that's great, you're going to like be like, oh man, like this is terrible. Like I need to be doing these great things. But you have to bring yourself back and say, hey, I only have a podcast. It's not making me millions of dollars. It's not making me money at all. I'm doing it because I love it. But you have to almost like set the bar for yourself and not allow people to penetrate your mind in that way, or else you're never going to succeed. And when I like had something to prove and was like, that's where I want to be, and I'm not there yet. And I saw that there was growth in it all, and that I don't consider myself ahead of others. I just consider myself like where I need to be right now. And then I need to keep working harder. And the minute that you decide that you're either better than anyone else or you succeed a lot for your age, that's the minute that you stop getting better.
I mean, that's great. I mean, that's good. I mean, not a lot of people, I mean, not a lot of 18-year-olds out there, thinking in the way that we're thinking, or they're very, like, probably like 10 to 15% of in the whole world in our age, where, I mean, I guess it's not the age, I would say, that makes us, kind of self-aware. Instead, it's like we start caring about people's opinions, especially during this age. Uh, Kind of, partying, and people, especially in the society that we live in, it's like pressurizing with grades, or like getting a job or going to good college, and like kind of mostly like showing off to others. Instead, we regret the things once we, like, start going to jobs. We regret like what we did in the past. And there was a quote that said, I think, all life is about is finding yourself as a kid. I don't know who's it by. It's like, you, whatever you desire as a kid, you're gonna end up desiring the same thing when you grow older, no matter what, no matter how much money you have. But yeah, I think that's what makes it successful. Yeah, you probably have a similar point to that.
Yeah, the one of the guys I follow, Charlie Rocket, he's incredible. He's all about like I not like the woo manifestation, but like writing your dreams and goals down and like not being afraid to write the biggest thing possible in your mind, and then trying to like focus on that as much as possible and do the work that it takes to get there. But one of the things he really believes in, he says, sit on the ground when you're like writing or thinking about your goals, because it'll make you feel like you're a kid again. Like when you're playing in the sandbox or when you're playing with your toys and you dream about your life in the future, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have all this money and cars, I'm gonna have like a cool wife, I'm gonna be doing all these things, I'll be a firefighter, like all these crazy goals that or whatever you think about when you're a kid, and these dreams that are so kid like. He likes to bring himself back to that because he thinks that's the most raw and truest form of himself and what he wants in life. And so that's what I've done. I don't legitimately sit on the floor, but I try to connect myself with who I was as a child and what I wanted to do, and have it almost influence what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that's great, man. I mean, yeah, great. That's great. I mean, it was probably tough for you in terms of your physical fitness or keeping. You don't have the touch as you used to do back then, but I think you'll get back soon. But yeah, I mean, as you said, I think what's your thought on adaptability uh, and accepting to new environment? I see it as like playing tennis for so long. I see like when I moved from not really kind of moved, just came here for uh, because of my dad's new job is working offshore. We had to stay here for a few months, and we had to return. We had to return back by July actually this year. But unfortunately, because of COVID and stuff, we had to, it got extended for next year because he didn't work for those periods since they didn't have a job. I mean, since they didn't employ it during that period. So during that time, I was, so frustrated because first of all, I'm in school. Obviously, I mean, I kind of didn't, but I miss my friends. I miss all of that. But right after the lockdown, I found, my goal is to I don't know if it might sound silly, but my goal is to play pro. Obviously, it's very too far, and I've kept myself like a 10-year plan. And in 10 years, if I can be like top 300 or top 400 in the world tennis. And I was finding that, I was finding ways to, and even in 5 star, trying to get as much coaching as possible, but it still didn't get me to the level that I wanted because I didn't have time because of schoolwork and all that kind of stuff. But right after that, when I moved in, I thought like my tennis was done because I didn't know like how tennis was here in India. But fortunately, everything got it was kind of a dream come true, I would say, because although like the environment is completely different, I'm getting to do what I love because I met have you heard of Sumit Nagal, who played Federer last year in US Open? He won the first set against Federer.
Mhm.
Yeah, his coach lives in the city that he plays at the club that I play at, and his coach, I met him. We got really close, and he got me players to hit like top 600 in the world. Plays in India. He got me to hit with those people, playing on clay courts, and which we're not used to basically when I was in the U.S. But yeah, playing a lot of tournaments and pretty much like having the lifestyle of a professional tennis player. Like waking up the morning, running, fitness, all that, coming back, schoolwork, and going back on the court for 4 hours, coming back, fitness again, and stretching, schoolwork, and go to sleep. It was like it. This is the routine that I love to do. Like I imagine myself so many years, uh, and I'm getting that right now. And right now I'm trying to apply for some Spain academy if I can get in some academy in Spain or play college tennis in the US. Either one might be possible for sure. Even though I'm not at the level that I desire to be right now. I still have a long way to go. I think one day at a time with good intentions and hard work, I think we'll pay it off. Because I don't want to regret, having. Um, I don't want to be like a wasted talent or wasted because all these years that I've practiced shouldn't be a waste. So I want to keep continuing. So that was my goal. And adapting to that, it was like a similar to tennis match, because we're not used to just hitting the balls over and over and over. Playing a match plays completely different, or playing new opponents who play pretty awkward, or who can beat you, who can still beat you, or play pushers. Like we're a variety of players. It kind of applies to life as well because you're kind of adapting to a variety of stimulus and different environments. And I think having like a neutral mindset of just reacting to whatever it comes to you gives me a chance to the kind of focus on the right rituals and right routines. And I just wanted to hear a thought from you. What do you think of that?
Yeah. So I think the two things that you explained will at least explain my point perfectly. And when you moved to India, you really didn't know what you were going to do, what it was going to be like. And what you did is you connected to the US. So you may be playing someone who's a really weird player. I bet you that if you're having a ton of balls in play and hitting the big targets, that's exactly what I would do if I was in a situation where I was uncomfortable. And a lot of times we judge, whether it be a player, whether it be a new place that you go to, we judge it before we get there and have an expectation instead of allowing the place to happen and then ourselves to go back to the basics. Because honestly, the only thing that's going to be consistent in your entire life is yourself. Like that's the only thing that no matter where you go, no matter who you're playing, whether it be tennis or life, the only thing that's going to be consistent is yourself. And so you have to be able to do those things throughout your day that bring you back to normalcy. So I know like when I go on a vacation, in order to feel like I'm still getting things done, I work out like either every mental state to not lose progress, or I go play a little tennis if I'm on vacation, just because I know that if I let myself go away too much or like rest too much or not do the things that I know I need to be doing, I'll decrease my level and I'll adapt in a negative way. I'll start to do less work because of what's happening. And a lot of people during quarantine, they didn't know how to adapt. Like they started eating too much food. I found this trap, watching too much TV, wasting too much time. And it was easy to do because we were at home and we played the victim mentality. But
Mhm.
the minute that you shift that mindset and to say, okay, this is an opportunity to grow from. And when you go into anywhere that's uncomfortable, that's where growth happens. You don't have growth when you're comfortable. Like when you're just sitting watching TV, you have to let yourself feel the suck. You have to let yourself feel like you're in it. I know like David Goggins, he said during quarantine, like when he was closed off from the world by himself, that's when he saw the most growth in himself because he didn't have other people to help him. He didn't have anyone else but himself. So it forced him to grow mentally. And I'm glad to be back in this mentality of that, like it's the world against me sort of situation. So you have to almost either create that environment in your mind or you have to adapt to what was given to you. So that's at least my take on adaptability, because I think a lot of people, um, when they think of adaptability, they think of like just a different situation. But especially when it's negative, you can't take it as something against you. You have to take it as something as an opportunity. It's just it's obligation versus opportunity. You have to do something versus you get to do something. It's the whole kind of balance with that.
Right. Right. I mean, yeah, I love that. I love that. When you said, like the mentality to keep, kind of like having expectations when you, it's like almost playing like a tennis match. Like when you play, when you're like an 8 UTR and play against a freaking 12, you expect him, to crush you instead of like trying the best he can. Like who knows what can happen? He might like freaking, he might have a bad day or anything can happen. So obviously, like the the odds are on his side, but you just have to give your best and instead of like being present, instead of having expectations, or either like in a negative manner, as you said. Yeah, I mean, I love that. That's great. I mean, that's all I had. I just had written down a few questions. I mean, first of all, thanks a lot, and just luck with your school,
Mhm.
college apps, and everything. Yeah.
Awesome. The last thing I'll say to whoever's listening is that like right now we're all going through a tough time and we all have difficult situations or reason to stop doing things. I've gone through a lot of excuses in my time and have made a lot of I'm not perfect. I make a lot of bad decisions. Like today, I'll admit I woke up at 10, like basically 10 the time I wanted to, but I don't get mad at yourself. Always be moving forward. Like there's going to be another day. Not be where you want to be, but overestimate what they can do in a month. There's always this kind of shift of how much time it takes to do something. And so people get discouraged. They can't see the day-to-day process, but don't give up. Keep pushing yourself. And yeah, I encourage you to listen to whatever Vital is talking about, as well as my podcast and any other person that can give you motivation on a daily basis.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and promote your podcast, that would be great as well.
Yeah,
5 a.m.
sure. So
Hustle, right?
my podcast is called 5 a.m. Hustle. That's the number 5 a.m. and then Hustle, and it's on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you find podcasts. But you can find us on Instagram at 5 a.m. Hustle Pod. And also, if you go like my LinkedIn, I post out there as well. Just my name, Jack Considine. But yeah, I'm just trying to inspire others to be the best version of themselves and figure out what makes people successful. So if you want to join me on that journey, I'd love to have you. We're over 80 episodes in and we're not stopping anytime soon. So thank you, Vital, for having me. I really appreciate it because we've been friends for a long time. And it's great to have somebody who has a similar mindset than me that wants to get after it. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.